think I made a mistake. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently I did a video talking about, under what conditions can retirees wear the military uniform. And in response to that video, somebody left a comment that could be summed up as, "I'm retired. They can't tell me what to do." And, maybe they don't tell you what to do anymore, but that doesn't mean that they couldn't. You see, all military retirees are still subject to UCMJ authority. And what's more, this has some kind of creepy implications for how you have to live your retired life. First, let's be clear. The military has jurisdiction over retirees. In fact, that's the title of a report prepared by the Congressional Research Service. This is a high-quality, short, easy-to-read article, and I'll put the link in the description. But what catches my eye is the date of this report. It was prepared for Congress less than a year ago. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. So I'm going to hit the highlights of the article, and then we'll get to the so what. Of course, most of you guys know that the armed forces have this kind of unique and distinct criminal code, the military justice system. And in addition to the usual goal of a criminal code, that is pursuing justice, the military justice system has the goal of preserving good order and discipline. The military justice system can legally be used to promote the effective and efficient functioning of the military establishment. And so there's a couple of ways that the military justice system differs from your typical law of the land. There is extensive authority for the military commander. This criminal code includes highly specific military-type offenses that you just wouldn't find in a civilian code of law. There is an entirely special tribunal called a court-martial. And the military justice system does away with certain constitutional rights like indictment by a grand jury or a trial by jury. What's more, the military justice system exercises global jurisdiction over all military members. Since most retirees still have a military status, that means they are subject to the military legal system. Now, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 14 of the Constitution gives Congress the authority to set rules and policies for the armed forces, the land forces, and the Navy. And Congress exercised that authority by creating UCMJ. And Congress has extended these rules to cover retirees from the very first instance of these rules being put in place. Now, the Supreme Court has looked at this issue, and they've generally said that there's two criteria to determine whether or not UCMJ should be applied to an individual. Those criteria are an individual's connection to the military and the military's power over that individual. And the Supreme Court has ruled that there are a lot of different types of people, like dependents and spouses, who are not subject to UCMJ. And while the Supreme Court has not yet ruled specifically on retirees, the federal courts have consistently applied the rule that retirees are subject to military discipline. As proof of that, they point to the fact that retirees can be recalled to active duty, that they're allowed to wear the uniform, and they can still be referred to by rank. Part of the rationale for this comes from a 1958 court case of the United States versus Hooper. The judge found that those on the retired list are not mere pensioners. They are part of a vital segment of national defense because of their experience and mature judgment that has to be relied upon during times of emergency, and that the salaries retirees receive is not just compensation for past services. It is a means devised by Congress to assure their availability and preparedness for future contingencies, and that this preparedness depends as much on their continued responsiveness to discipline as it does on their continued state of physical health. So yes, military retirees are subject to UCMJ. But so what? Well, to put it mildly, UCMJ has some pretty strange offenses. Or maybe a better way to say it is, there's some offenses that make a lot of sense when you're on active duty, but they start to seem strange from the context of a retiree. Failure to obey an order or a regulation, wearing unauthorized insignia, provoking speeches and gestures, making a check without sufficient funds, breaking quarantine. But probably the most important feature of UCMJ that retirees should be aware of is its limitations on free speech, making disloyal statements, disrespect towards superior commissioned officers, and contempt towards officials. Now, I'm no lawyer. In fact, after doing this research, I have this nagging suspicion that I'm just one step away from saying something that gets this whole channel shut down. But it seems like a good rule of thumb to avoid personal attacks or sharing any information that would place a unit or its mission at risk. But like I said, I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Oh, and here's one. If you're curious about another way that the military can exercise authority over retirees, watch this video about involuntary recall.